All right, today we're going to dive into this really powerful idea from Japanese manufacturing called Noki. And what's so interesting is that at its core, it's not just about, a date on a calendar. It's about something much deeper, a promise.
I mean, just think about it for a second. In any part of your life, personal or professional, what happens when someone breaks a promise? That trust just starts to crumble. It creates doubt, frustration, and the effects can just spiral. It's a feeling we all know. And in the world of business, that broken promise has a very specific name.
That's right. In the world of making things, every single deadline is that promise. It's a commitment you make to a customer that you will deliver exactly what they asked for at a certain quality at a very specific time. And when you miss it, it's not just a minor delay, it's a fundamental failure. So let's start by just reframing how we think about this. Missing a deadline isn't some simple scheduling mix-up. No, it's a breach of trust. One that can really damage your customer relationships, tarnish your whole brand, and lead to all sorts of spiraling costs. And this brings us right to the heart of the matter, this Japanese concept of Noki. So let's really break down what this word means, because trust me, it's so much more than just a due date. So Noki is actually short for a longer phrase, nonyu kigen, which literally means delivery deadline. But it has this brilliant dual purpose. On the one hand, it's the external promise you make to your customer, but on the other, it's an internal benchmark, a key indicator of just how well your entire operation is actually running.
And this is where things get really interesting. You have to understand the distinction between the requested deadline, that's what the customer wants, and the promised deadline. That's the official, binding commitment the company makes after looking at everything it can realistically do. So the first one is the goal, the wish, but the second one, that's the vow.
Now, to understand how a company can make that promise with any confidence, we have to talk about a related concept, lead time. This isn't a date, it's a duration. It's the total amount of time it takes to get from the very beginning of an order to the very end. And this whole duration is made up of 4 key phases. You've got development, which is just getting the idea ready. Then procurement, which is ordering all the parts you need. After that comes the actual production, building the thing, and finally delivery, getting it out the door and to the customer. Each one is a crucial link in the chain. And this comparison just lays it all out perfectly. Lead time is the internal question, how long is this going to take us? It's all about your own efficiency. But Noki, that's the external promise. It answers the question, what's the final day you'll have this? You simply can't set a reliable Noki if you haven't totally mastered your lead time first.
Okay, so we know what Noki is, but what really happens when that promise gets broken? Well, the costs are way, way bigger than you might think.
The fallout is like this, triple threat. It hits you from 3 different angles. First, you wreck the relationship with your customer. Trust is gone. Second, your brand's reputation takes a massive hit. You become the company that's always late, and that just poisons future growth. And third, the financial hit is immediate. We're talking overtime pay, crazy expensive expedited shipping, maybe even penalties. It's a really vicious cycle.
So, this all leads to the big question, right? How do you avoid this disaster? How do you actually master the deadline and turn your Noki into something that makes you stronger than the competition? Well, it takes a really disciplined, systematic approach. And the answer has its own term, Noki Kanri, or deadline management. This isn't about crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. It's a proactive, structured system designed to make sure that promise is kept every single time without fail.
So what does this system, this Noki Kanri, actually look like when you put it into practice? Let's open up the toolkit and look at the core strategies that make it all work.
It really boils down to 3 key pillars. First, you got to plan with a buffer. Build some extra time, some extra stock into the schedule. That's your safety net for when things, inevitably go wrong. Second, you are constantly working to shorten that lead time. This is where automation and making processes more efficient comes in. And third, and this one is absolutely critical, you have to make your progress visible to everyone.
This whole idea of making things visible has its own powerful concept in Japanese manufacturing, miyaruka. It's all about transforming the status of your operations from something hidden away in a spreadsheet or only known by a manager into something everyone can see and understand with just a glance. No more secrets, no more guessing games.
And to achieve this miyaruka, you focus on what's called the 4M framework. You have to track and manage the status of the people, or man, the equipment, machine, the raw supplies, material, and the official processes, method. When you make these 4 things totally transparent, you can spot a potential problem long before it causes a delay. And all of this is built on a foundation of incredible organization, which is known as the 5S method. By sorting everything you need from what you don't, setting it all in a logical order, shining the workplace, standardizing the processes, and sustaining these habits, you create an environment where inefficiency simply has nowhere to hide. Everything just runs smoother and faster.
So, we've gone all the way from the philosophy of a promise to the very practical tools for keeping it. So for the last step, let's see how these timeless principles are getting a massive boost from modern technology.
Trying to keep track of all the 4Ms, managing lead times, and visualizing everything in a huge factory, that used to be a monumental manual effort. But today, we have powerful software, things like production schedulers, that can automate all of it. They analyze all the moving parts and generate the best possible plan to hit that Noki, turning all these discipline principles into an automated reality.
Which kind of leaves us with one final big question to chew on. We've got all these incredible tools, all these brilliant philosophies to help us meet a deadline. But in the world we live in now, with supply chains going haywire and customer demand changing on a dime, maybe the hardest part, the true mastery of Noki, isn't just about hitting the deadline. Maybe it's about having the wisdom to know which promise you can realistically make in the first place.